Chevys kicking overdrive, melodies that come to life. That's why I'm heading down South 62.
I got my start in music probably about the age of 18. I was singing on the school bus with my best buddy, Jesse Lee, on our way back and forth from vocational school. Then one night, my father was always in country music. He had his own band called Sound of Country, and we snuck into a place, the Big Tree bar in Lakewood, New York, and my dad and Jesse were talking, and next thing I know, I got called up onto the stage. I was scared to death. First time on stage. I'd never been in chorus or band or anything of the sorts. I just sang out loud amongst my friends. And that night I got up there and I did Boot, Scoot, and Boogie, Brooks and Dunn. And I got done with the song, and Bumpy Peterson, the lead singer of that group, invited me to come to practice the next week and become part of the band. And I played with those guys. I mean, they were all way older than me. I was probably 19. They were all in their 50s and 60s, and they just loved country music. So I played with those guys for about 2 years, every Friday night at the Lakewood Legion. And I got bit by the music bug so bad. I wanted to do more. And you know, those guys were older and they were kind of comfortable just playing that Friday night gig every week and having fun. So I started my own group. We actually never played a live gig. My very first band, I think it was called Showdown. And we never played a gig out. We practiced for months and months and months. And then I switched groups. I ran into another keyboard player and ended up starting another group, which Gotham Rose. And it was weird. I met John Thompson, a songwriter, and I was recording with him and working on a few things. And you know, then I got introduced to this long-haired guitar player. Comes walking in the studio with hair down to his butt, a leather jacket. I think it had some chain thing coming over it. A Gibson SG guitar. I mean, he just looked like a metalhead. And you know, I was straight country music, and I was going, geez, John, who is this guy, and why in the world did you bring him in with me? Well, then I got to hear Rich play, and I got to listen to the songs he was writing. So it was just an incredible start for Rich and I. And that at that point in time, I was probably 20, 21, probably just 21.
I don't have one memory that sticks out in my mind musically as a kid, because I was fortunate enough to grow up in a family where I was surrounded by music from day one. My mom's side, everybody played music. My father's side, same thing. My father grew up in a singing group when he was a kid with his sister, traveling the country, different churches and all across the country, and continued to play music all through his life. And my mom's side, all my uncles played music, had bands. One of them went on to be pretty successful. And as a kid, I remember sitting around listening to these records, and it didn't hit me really until I was probably 4 or 5 years old that these records I was listening to were people I knew. They were my family. My uncles had a couple records put out and some 45s, and it finally hit me right around 5 or 6, I would say, that, you know, these records I'm putting on here and listening to every day are my family. I know these people, you know. And I thought, man, if they can do that, I can too. So I thought, that's what I'm gonna do. 5 or 6 years old, I knew right away I wanted to play music, and most of all, I wanted to write music. I didn't even play an instrument at that point. I just wanted to write music. So at 5 or 6, my goal was then to find a way to write music, so I needed a tool. And my mom tried to teach me. She had an organ in the house, and she was a keyboard player. And started me out on playing her organ, and it wasn't really working for me. And I knew they had an old Gibson flat top under their bed upstairs. And I guess they didn't feel I was old enough to play that yet. So they kind of kept me away from it. But what they didn't know is when they were gone or outside or somewhere where I had a few minutes, I'd go up and sneak that thing out from underneath the bed and start strumming on it. And I knew that's what I wanted to do. So after several years of begging and bothering them, it was about 11, they finally said, all right, take the guitar and leave us alone. So I got the guitar, and my dad showed me my first 3 chords, and it went from there. After I learned those first 3 chords, I think I was in my bedroom for a solid 2 weeks, never came out except to eat probably, and until I could get them where I could play, switch between the chords. And I even started coming up with melodies and kind of got an idea for some songs and things, and it was just something I just loved to do. And from there, a couple of my cousins were also musicians, and we got together and started a little bluegrass band. And it wasn't long into that we had a gig at my grandparents' 50th wedding anniversary in front of 200 people. And when I showed up there, I saw how many people were there and hid under a table, literally. And my cousins went up to start playing. We were set up in a pavilion, and they started playing without me. And everybody kept coming by me saying, I thought you played with them. And I said, well, I did. And they was like, well, you ought to get up there and play. Well, after I had enough people tell me that, where I just finally worked up the courage and went up there. And my oldest cousin kind of shook his head and said, all right, well, let's start over again now that our guitar player's here. So we got through the set, and you couldn't have ripped me off that stage by the time when I got up there and started hitting the first few notes. You couldn't have got me off there. I loved it. I knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I just did that with them for a while, playing bluegrass music, and till that one day when I heard my first Ozzy Osbourne song. And that kind of changed my path for a while there. And started getting into electric guitar and getting into 70s hard rock. Black Sabbath was a big influence early on, and Deep Purple, some of those bands. And also being raised in the church, I felt that maybe I should do something with the music that would be maybe something that my parents wouldn't disapprove of, and maybe I should play Christian music. And I started doing that. I started playing with some guys at my church, put a Christian band together. And actually the guy that's for filming this was actually a bit of an influence on me too, because his band played at my 16th birthday. And always thought they were a great band, always thought he was a great guitar player, and it kind of inspired me to do the same thing. So I did that for all through my teenage years. Played in a Christian band called Trinity, and that's where I kind of cut my teeth writing music. We didn't do any covers, we did all original stuff, and so I had to write it all. And we had another guy in the band here and there that wrote some music too, but I was mainly the writer for all the stuff we'd played. Played out a lot, kind of got some, experience playing out and things like that. And then as we got older, we probably got around, 20, 21, decided to kind of move it out, start playing bigger places. A couple of the guys in the band I was in at the time went off to college, so started hooking up with different people. And I was working at this place where another guy that worked there was in a band, and he kept telling me about this guy named Anthony Brown from Warren. I was working in Jamestown at the time, and just kept telling, every day we'd talk about music, and he'd always bring his name up. And then I knew he played in a band with his brother, and he played keyboards and stuff. And a guy I played with at the time, him and I went up to this music store in Fredonia, New York, and I was looking at guitars and, probably looking for some sort of new gear for whatever I was doing, and overheard a conversation of this guy talking to this other guy about keyboards, and are you still playing with your brother down in Warren and all this? And I told the guy I was with him, it's got to be that Anthony Brown guy. So I just walked over to him while he's still having that conversation, and I said, "You're from Warren?" He says, "Yeah." I said, your name's Anthony Brown. You play in a band with your brother." And he kind of looked at me like, "How did you know that?" And I said, "Well, I work with a guy," and I said his name, and he knew who he was. And that's how we first kind of made our first connection.
So I started out, I think I was about 16, and I remember being in high school, and a kid I was friends with named Tom Mesmer, I remember, was getting a band together. And so I went over to his rehearsal area, his parents' house, and I wanted to be a drummer, actually. That's how I started out. And in fact, I remember being a kid in my hallway of the house, sneaking outside my brother's room, listening to him to play. He played bass like he was awesome, and he would just throw an album on like of Iron Maiden or Rush or Yes. He'd play the whole thing from start to finish. He was just awesome, and I would just sit outside his room just listening. Oh, he's awesome. So I kind of wanted to be in a band too. So I got this little opportunity to go check out a band, and yeah, they had a drummer. So I was like, oh, well, you know, I'm not gonna be in this band. And I remember Tom saying, well, I've got this keyboard here. I'm thinking to myself, okay, I've never touched a piano in my life, you know, and he's like, yeah, I'll show you. So, you know, I started out the old one finger, and but honestly, I fell in love with it, you know, and that's all I wanted to do. And so I did that for years with him, and it was fun. And then, you know, of course, everybody goes to school, and then it was probably, I think I was probably about 20, I think. I remember being in a music store in Fredonia, New York. What's that place called? I can't remember. But I met Rich Alcorn there. Just talking to the sales guy about keyboards, and he kind of came up to me and said, hey, you know, are you such and such, you know, play keyboards? And I'm like, yeah. So we kind of met then, and later on we got in a band together, and we were doing a little Queensryche tribute band, I remember.
And after that, the guy I worked with kind of put a band together with Anthony and I both included in it. We did a Queensryche tribute band. And after playing with Anthony for a while, I knew right away that he was, as far as musicianship, he was a little bit ahead of a lot of guys I had played with, and pushed me a lot. So, and he wrote music. He wrote music really well, and I got along with him really well. And so we just, you know, ever since then, we've always kind of maintained a connection. Whether we were in a band together or not, we always got together and did something. And then I'm trying to think after that, I think is probably when I finally met Jeff Lewis.
Rich and I started working together, ooh, geez, weeks and weeks and weeks, and writing and recording. And you know, we ended up getting a drummer, and then we had a bass player, and then pretty quick we were ready to play. And our first gig was at the Frewsburg Legion. And we played there, you know, and it was amazing. First few gigs were at the Legion. We just played there a good bit. And then one night, John told us that, I believe it was Sony Records from New York City was coming down, and they were going to do a showcase where, you know, maybe we could get a record deal. And I remember Richie's Uncle Gene came up, so there was a lot of pressure that night. I had Gene Johnson from Diamond Rio sitting at a table staring at me, and I had these two record executives from New York City, you know, staring at your every move while you're trying to play. That night, we played our butts off. We tried to do what we could to impress them, and you know, afterwards, I saw him shake John's hand and walk away, and you know, kind of asked John what was up, and he said, well, he kind of pulled me to the side, and he said, they wanted you and Rich. You know, they were interested in you two, but they didn't want the rest of the band. And I was like, yeah, that's not happening, you know. We're a group, we're gonna stay together.
That band that I was playing with Anthony at the time kind of disbanded. And I was getting frustrated writing music for rock bands and stuff, even though it just didn't, it wasn't really working out for me. I wasn't really feeling it. And with my uncle was doing really well with his band in Nashville, and I thought, man, maybe I should just try to write some country music and send stuff down to him and see if maybe I can get hooked up as a writer or something. And so I decided I was going to start writing country music. I gave it a try. I thought it was turning out pretty good. It seemed to come fairly natural to me, given my background, I guess. It just kind of flowed. So I had a handful of them. I decided to record some and went to a friend's house that had a keyboard and a little recording system. And during the time I was there doing that, a guy showed up who was a producer from Nashville, and got introduced to him, and he asked me what I was doing, and I explained it to him, explained about my uncle in Nashville, and I don't know if that made him maybe a little more interested in me or not, I don't know, but he wanted me to come over to his house and talk with him for a while. So I went over and we sat down with some guitars and started picking, and I played him some of my songs, and he played me some of his. He has some songs you would definitely recognize. And he asked me, he said, you know, I'm working with a band that I think you would be good for. I need somebody with a little bit of an edge in it. And I said, well, you know, sure, I'd be willing to meet somebody, and if it was a country band, and I'd never been in an actual country band, and I thought, well, if this is the direction I'm going, I might as well just jump in and do it. So he gets all these guys together. I don't know what they were called at the time, if they even had a name, but I showed up, and they were all there. And I walk in, still had hair down to my waist, and I had a guitar that was anything but a country guitar. It wasn't a Tele, it wasn't a Strat, it was a Strat Shay, but it was definitely a heavy metal guitar. That's all I had at the time. And I showed up, and these guys didn't know what to think of me. And Jeff especially, because Jeff was country to the core, and he saw me, and I think he got a little freaked out. But you know, he played him some of my songs, and I could see Jeff kind of changing his opinion of me a little bit, and I could see he got it. You know, he could hear what I was trying to do. So
that group, we played 6 years. We were out on the road. We were, you know, just honored. We got to play with George Jones. We played with Toby Keith. We got to play with Neil McCoy. I mean, Diamond Rio, we did a couple shows with Diamond Rio, which was an amazing honor. Patty Loveless, I'll never forget the first opening act that we got to do was, you know, we played Frewsburg Legion on a Friday night. You know, maybe 50 people, 60 people there. I get a phone call on Sunday, and a promotion company, Delta Productions, had heard our CD, and they wanted to know if we were willing to go, you know, and travel around and be the opening act for some of the big country music stars. So our very first opening act was with Patty Loveless 3 days after she won Female Vocalist of the Year. And I remember we were backstage, and you know, it blew your mind away. You're 21-year-old kid, you're backstage with Patty Loveless, who at that point was one of my favorites. You know, and we're sound checking, and we're getting ready for the show, and I was like, this is amazing. Oh, I can't wait. And then about 30 seconds before we walk out on that stage, it hit me. And I remember I looked over at Rich and the other band members, and I just said, I don't know if I can do this. My tongue felt like it swelled up this big, and I didn't feel like I could say a word, let alone go out and sing. And you know, I got out there, I just started belting. 30 seconds later, all that scaredy cat in me went away, and you know, after that, I was bit hard. That the big crowd, the big lights, the big sound, everything you dream of as a musician, you know, after that night, it steamrolled for 6 years. I mean, we were blessed to play, and
we did a CD together. We're pretty successful with it. Opened up for pretty much everybody in the 90s in the tri-state area here. One of which stood out to me was we opened up for George Jones. So I got to meet him and hang out with him for a little bit, and he was a big deal to me early on. He was just one of those guys that just got right right in there. And so I was really honored to be able to do that. But we went on with that for a while, and through a series of close calls and near misses in Nashville and other places, we all kind of got frustrated, and especially Jeff, because he'd been doing all the traveling and the leg work and everything, and I think he had just had enough, so we kind of disbanded for a while. And it was at that point that I had a lot of free time, and Anthony and I started getting together again and doing this progressive metal project that we did. And again, like I said earlier, he was somebody who pushed me, and I really grew as a guitar player through that whole process. And the whole time, you know, my influences, as vast as they are, and his are just as vast, but they're completely different. Our influences started kind of mixing together, and we came up with some really neat stuff. And I thought, man, if I could only get that band back together, or a band back together with Jeff, and get Anthony included in this, I think it would be something amazing.
Rich and I kind of stayed together for years, kind of writing songs, and we had a little side project called Graphite Symphony, and we did that for years and put out like 3 albums, and actually have a 4th coming out, hopefully. A little heavier, but you know, it was just a lot of fun, a lot of great music. But in that time period, you know, he had some side bands, playing with a band called Gotham Rose, with this singer named Jeff Lewis. And so I kind of met Jeff, and, you know, country was definitely not my thing at all. But I loved the songwriting aspect of it. Rich was writing some great songs, and I just really enjoyed it. And so we kind of, let me think, it was probably 10 years ago. Oh gosh, probably, maybe even longer. Tried to do a little project with him, and kind of petered out. We just weren't having, you know, a lot of luck with it, or it wasn't the right timing, I'll say. And you know, I had been recording, I guess, for years. Actually, back in high school, when Tom Mesmer, we just liked to write songs and record. I started out on a little 4-track Yamaha tape recorder, you know, and basically moved up to an 8-track recorder, and then it was a digital recorder, and then it was Pro Tools with a Mac. And so I really dove into the recording engineering side, and so we were able to record albums. You know, weren't the greatest, but they were fun. And so we tried that, and it didn't work. The timing wasn't right. And then, you know, Rich and I kept working together in the studio with lots of different projects. And you know, chasing a record deal like we were at that time, and kind of turning one down, which, you know, I kind of kicked myself in the butt for for quite a few years for that. It's hard on you as a person. Your pride, there's a lot of rejection in the music business. And you know, I had the opportunity to go to Nashville. I was a special guest of Leah Knight at the CRS convention. She has a nationally syndicated radio show, and she heard our stuff, did a pick it or flick it, and it actually got picked across the country, which was pretty cool. And ended up, she invited me down to Nashville to spend a week with her, and she brought me around to all the country radio convention. She brought me around to all the different record label heads and just introduced me and let me kind of just talk myself and try to pitch myself in the group. And, you know, nothing ever come out of that. Like normal. You're so close yet so far away. I met with a gentleman named Dick Frank. He was the entertainment attorney for Shania Twain, Hank Williams Sr., Hank Williams Jr., Alan Jackson. So I'm in Nashville, and I
somehow John ended up getting me a meeting with this fella. So I'm in his office again, shaking in my boots, scared to death, waiting for my name to get called to go in and get to sit with him, and I didn't know what was going on at this point in time. I was probably 23, and I remember looking at all those gold records on the wall from all those superstars who I loved and listen to still today. And I just remember going, what am I doing here? It was crazy and humbling. And I remember I walked into Dick's office and he sat me down, and I was already shaken and scared and just so nervous. And he just looks at me, and he had a big old cigar, and he said, well, boy, John is an old friend of mine, and he said that you have a pretty good sound going on right now. And he goes, well, a lot of people say that about different people, and I'll be the judge of whether I think it's good. And he goes, I just want you to know, if I think it's good but not good enough, I'm going to tell you. And if I think it sucks, I'm going to tell you. And he says, and if I think you got a shot, I'm going to tell you. So I sit there and I watch him hit play, and this is we actually had CDs still. Wasn't like today where everything was MP3 downloads and all that. And we actually had cassette tapes still too, which might be mind-boggling for a few of you that don't know what those are. But so he hits play and listens to about 10 seconds of the first 3 songs, and he kind of looked at me, and I lowered my head, and I was like, well, not good enough. And then he hit the next 3, and he only listened to about 10 seconds of every song on the album, and he just looked me right in the eyes, and he goes, well, Jeff, I'm going to tell you something. He goes, that's one of the best damn bands I've heard in a long time. He goes, I'll be in touch with you when I think there's something for you. Well, Mr. Frank passed away in 2018, and that phone call never came. So it was just another super high, and then cut your legs right out from underneath you, super low. But we're playing music because we love it. But that roller coaster. So about 2002, after 6 years of cruising around and opening for all the big guys, and I got to meet some incredible musicians and the stagehands that were helping us, and Ed and Becky Grasavich, all the shows they let us do with them with Delta Productions. I remember June 2nd, 2002, we played at Pilot Field in Buffalo, New York, and Brad Paisley was the headliner. Lone Star, Ty Herndon, Cindy Thompson, Emerson Drive, and we were in another contest up there. The winner got a record deal and $100,000 or something, and we played the show, and we gave it our all, and we get done, and the judges announced the winners, and of course by 1 point we were off the mark. This really talented young girl, she sang her heart out. She was real good. She won. We lost by a point of the judges' scorebook. And I remember being deflated again. And as we walked off that stage, I just looked at the guys, and I said, I think I'm done. I think I'm done. And I walked away from music for 10 years. I didn't play for 10 years, didn't touch a guitar, didn't touch a microphone. I just worked and tried taking care of my family.
So it took a long time, but through a whole series of events, we did end up doing some recordings with Jeff, and it didn't really work out to be anything right away. And until we had all these songs in the studio going, and Jeff was kind of busy with his life, so I told Anthony, I said, we got these songs sitting here, and this kid came in to do a CD. So I said, well, see if he's interested in them, we'll record them with him. And he said he was. He listened to them. He said, yeah, he likes them. Let's do it. So I come in, and I wanted new versions of some of the songs we'd even done in Gotham Rose, so we kind of redid some of my old stuff. I had a few new things, and we recorded this album with this kid, and he was really good. Well, he took it to the local radio station, and of course they played it, and I'm sitting in my truck at work, getting ready to get out, and I hear the song come on the station. It was one of my songs, and it was one of my older songs that Jeff had sang. And I'm sitting there listening to it, and all of a sudden my phone rings. I look down, and it's Jeff. I answer my phone. He says, "Who the heck is this dude singing one of my songs on the radio?" And I said, "Hey," I said, you know, you're busy. I wanted to do something. I don't want these songs to sit around anymore, so we just did this." And he says, "Well, get ready, because I'm coming down, and we're going to do this. Get rid of this dude. We're going to do this." So that kind of started the fire under Jeff a little bit. Still took a while, but all in all, I mean, it all came together.
Kind of kept in contact with Rich and old Norm Cady. Now Norm, you know, he's an older gentleman, but his passion for music is something that it's unbelievable how big it is. And at 70 some years old, that is still his life. And if you've ever been bitten by the music bug, you kind of understand what I mean. It is his whole passion is writing and singing, and it's just phenomenal. I wish I had that much to show as he does, because it's incredible. But old Stormin' Norman, he wrote a song and kept asking me to sing it, and I'm like, "Norm, I don't want to get back involved in that at all, man." Even though Rich was playing, and you know, Anthony was playing, and I really didn't want any part of it. Well, finally, after his 100th time of asking, I was like, "All right, Norm, I'll do your song for you."
Basically, you know, from there we recorded a song for a friend of ours, Norm Cady. He came to us, and I had recorded a lot of songs for Norm, and he had this one called "Land of Dreams," and he wanted Jeff to sing on it. And so we I think we pulled Jeff out of retirement or something, I believe, and had him sing on it. And so it was like a one and done type of thing. It was done, it was cool. We had a great song. All right, next. And
through Norm Cady, brought us some songs. Anthony and I'd worked as a session player in his studio for quite a while, and Norm Cady would come down with a song every once in a while, and we'd do it for him. And I think it was the second one I was doing, which was "Land of Dreams." We were sitting in the studio recording it, and I don't know if it was that song or one of the other songs, but we were in the middle of something, and one of us turned to the other one and said, "Wouldn't it be neat if, after all these hundreds of songs we've recorded, wouldn't it be neat if one of them finally did something? You know, something just you know, even just kind of big. It'd be just kind of neat to have something happen with one of these songs." We've done so many of them. And it literally 2 weeks later, I think, is when we got that call that they wanted us to come down to Houston to play, because we had won that contest that Norm had entered that song in.
His song called "Land of Dreams." We ended up coming in the studio, we record it, and you know, Norm takes it. I think it's over and done with. You know, we're out, we're done. And all of a sudden, I'm at my campground one night, camping with my family, and I get this phone call from Texas, and I'm like, "Who in the world is calling me on a Sunday from Texas?" So I answer it, and this lady starts talking to me about, you know, the song and being in a contest, and I was clueless to what she was talking about. Norm went and entered this song in a national songwriters contest. I didn't tell any of us. And it won. It won.
I remember it was probably a good year or so later, at least, maybe even a year and a half, get a call from Jeff saying, "Hey, old Normie sent that song into some contest and we won it." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, I had no idea.
The lady calling me from Texas was the actress Janine Turner, and she was letting me calling me to let me know that she wanted all of us to fly down to Houston and play the song live at the Houston 4th of July celebration. So myself, Norm, Anthony Brown, and Rich, start rehearsing and getting ready. We've only played the song in the studio while we recorded it. It was a year later, so we were all kind of rusty.
And all of a sudden, here we are getting flown out to Houston on the 4th of July to play a 4-minute song in front of, gosh, I think it was about 24,000 people there on a 7-lane highway they shut down. And
I drove the gear down. The other boys flew down, and I thought, I'm gonna take a ride. My dad rode in the truck with, and a good friend rode down with, and we stopped in Nashville for the evening. I was thinking, I've got 14 hours to get to Texas. My wife's flying in. I got to pick her up at the airport. Well, before I did any of that, I just Googled, how far is it from Nashville to Texas? I didn't realize how big a state Texas was. So Google will tell you, you can be there in about 11 to 12 hours, and that's just to the edge of Texas. It isn't to the edge of Houston, where I had to go. So I had to tell my wife that I was 19 hours away and that she was going to have to take Uber for the first time by herself. Where we were at, we didn't even have Uber yet in our area. It was it was all the bigger cities, because we kind of live in Podunkville. But so yeah, we get down to Houston, and I've never felt heat like that in my life. we 102 to the night we played, and Anthony decided we were all going to wear shorts. We thought, because it was so warm, and Anthony was like, no, we got to be all duded up and look the part. We're in Texas. So we get out of the vehicle that brought us over. They had a van pick us up at the hotel or something and run us over to the stage area. And on the blacktop at 8 o'clock at night, it was 112 degrees. We were all melting, but got up there, nailed the song, happy as we could be, and just hoping that was our break. All right, we played in Texas in front of all these people. Maybe somebody was out there listening. But another year goes by, and nothing doing.
I was like, wow, this is pretty cool, this was fun, and time goes by, nothing happens, and there another year or so goes by and nothing, and
all right, so a year later, after we do the Houston show, we're thinking everything's over with, myself, Anthony, and Rich, we're just kind of like, what are we gonna do? Kind of really not hard after anything, not working on songs, not working on an album. Old Norm pulls off another one. So all of a sudden, Normie's calling us up, and hey, we're going to play on the Mike Huckabee show. And we're like, Mike Huckabee? You mean the guy that ran for president, the governor, Mike Huckabee, his daughter's the White House press secretary, Mike Huckabee? Norm's like, yeah, I got us on the show. So it's just, time and time again, no matter how astray our path went, a year or 2 years or 3 years, something always kicked us back on to the highway. Don't know what it was, but something always veered us back into the music, back into what was happening.
All right, now I'm going to pause. This is how I have to tell this part of the story, because this is going to make sense to everybody now. So we play on the Mike Huckabee show, and we just get done playing the song, and Trey Corley, the music producer and keyboardist for Mike Huckabee's band, we're down in Nashville, and we play the song. And so we're on the stage talking just after we finished playing the song. And Trey's talking to me, and he's like, hey, you guys are used to this. You're playing on TV and this and that. And I'm like, what are you talking about? I'm like, we never played on TV really. We're not even a band, we're nobody, you know, and this is the second time we played this song ever. We've never played another song outside of this. And he's looking at me like, what? He didn't even believe me. I'm like, I go, Trey, do you even know how we got on the show? And he's like, well, you won that contest, that Constituting America contest. I said, yeah, we got them on the show. And he's like, what are you talking about? I said, look down the stage. I said, see Mike standing down there. At the end of every show, Mike actually shakes the hands of everybody in the audience. They line up, they get to talk to him and meet him, get a picture with him and talk to him for a couple minutes. It's kind of nice. I said, well, old Normie was down in the audience and he goes up to Mike and he hands him a CD. He says, gotta check this song out. So we had these little printed CDs, had Land of Dreams on it, and Mike's like, sounds like an interesting song, I'm gonna check it out. We had a phone call within a few days from then and were asked to play on the show. So Trey is like, what? He couldn't believe it. Like, he's like, that just doesn't happen. I said, I know, here we are, you know. And
about a year after that, we ended up on Mike Huckabee's show and it really got some momentum started. And that's when we decided we needed to do an album.
So that kind of revved us up. We weren't really prepared for it, but kind of revved us up to, you know, start getting a little more serious about actually doing an album and you know.
So we finally sat down and just figured out we needed to get serious about things and get our butts moving and make this more of a business move for us and a passion and a love move and get this album working.
You know, we had some songs written, we needed some more, and basically, you know, sat down and said, all right, let's do this.
So we got together and started getting songs together, and it's taken about, I don't know, a good year anyway, maybe a little longer. But we knew we needed other players. It was just Jeff and Anthony and I. And Anthony and I are also in another band that it's a cover band, and we have some, our drummer Darren was in that, and we thought, well, we love Darren's playing, and then he's really versatile, and he has a lot of different backgrounds and influences, so we, you know, asked him if he was interested, and he was. So we got him in the band.
So we had Darren, a drummer, come in. Anthony was working with him on another project, and he came in and he started laying down real drum tracks, because Anthony, at that point in time, after a TV show and the Houston gig, we were still, our drummer was Anthony on the keyboard. If you can believe that. And so we actually had a live drummer. We got all of our songs all tracked in with the live drummer.
Well, I started on piano really young, and you know, formal lessons, the whole thing, but then I quickly realized that drums were the place to be, you know, so still took my piano lessons, but I really had just an affinity for drums, and I did everything I could, every music program at school, whether it was marching or jazz or whatever else, just anything I can get my hands on for drums, and you know, of course, got into rock bands in high school just like anyone else did, and continued with that after high school, and met all the people in the local area. In fact, Anthony and Rich practiced we all practiced in the same building together, and we were kind of vaguely aware of each other, even though we weren't working together at the time. We can hear each other rehearsing and all that stuff, and I think that's kind of how we all met. And you know, then later down the road, just had a chance to get involved in some original projects together, and you know, and just different appearances at the studio. You know, one time Jeff would be there, and maybe you know, another time Rich would be there, and you know, hey, listen to some of these new songs we're working on, and maybe you'd lay down some drums for this, for some scratch tracks. And
at the time, we did some projects with like a band LaRoe and some other things. We had done a bunch of stuff together live, and so we asked him to get on board, and he did.
So Anthony was releasing an album, one of his Graphite Symphony albums, and asked me to show up for the CD release party and maybe become part of that, which I did, because that was really good music, and a lot of the people involved in that, or at least some of them, are involved in this project even. That's how far it's come. But after that, I brought him in to play keyboards on another original project that we were doing. And it was a national release, and we just needed some really good keyboard stuff in there. So, of course, got to bring Anthony in for that. And you know, we traveled around and played with that for a while. And while we were doing that studio stuff, some of these other songs started coming about. Jeff was going to be in the studio this day, and Rich. So why don't you come down and meet with them and hear some of the stuff we're working on, maybe lay some scratch drums down for this, and that was going back a few years at this point, but
you know, we were making progress, and then it just so happens in this recording of another album, Anthony ran into this really phenomenal mandolin player who we found out plays lap steel, who we found out plays the dobro, who plays guitar. So he agreed that he'd come in and sit down and listen to our stuff and lay down some tracks with us. You know, and Tom Hodges, he's phenomenal.
How did it all start? That's a long story. It started back when I was a kid. My influences, like everybody else, probably came from family. My uncles were all musicians, a couple of them in country bands, one of them in a bluegrass band, which I was real fond of. Fiddle players, banjo players, guitar players. So as a young kid, I was always in awe that, you know, they'd come to family gatherings and just be able to get those instruments out of the case and just start picking and having a good time. And so I was a little bit too young to, pick up a guitar. At least I thought so. And going through high school, some of the cool kids played the guitar too, so I wanted one of those. And my parents were kind enough to buy me a cheap guitar. I learned how to play it until my fingers bled. It's a real story. It really happened. The strings were about that far up off the neck. It was from Kmart, or I forget, but it couldn't have been more than $100. And I spent a lot of time learning the scales on that instrument, and I saved up enough money after I got my first job and bought a real guitar. And it didn't take long after that where I just couldn't put it down. Get out of high school, I get my first opportunity in a group. I wasn't really ready for it, but they were a 50s, 60s country band. And it was an opportunity, and I really didn't like the music that much, but I thought it was a good thing to do, maybe get out there and get my name out there with some other musicians. And we played just about every single week. I was fortunate enough to get that opportunity with them. And it lasted for 2 or 3 years. Met a couple other people in that group. One of my best friends, Dan Matecki, I met through that group. He's a great bass player. A few years later, we started our own group, and that had a bunch of questionable band names over the years that I really can't mention. Some of them are pretty cool, and other ones not so much, but we played together for 18 years, and rock and roll, country, bluegrass, a lot of Pink Floyd influence, Allman Brothers type stuff.
Still missing something. We didn't have a bass player. Thought about getting a fiddle player. Thought about, what else could we get? And so Anthony one night said, I know this guy named Tom. I'll give him a call, see if he's interested. So gave Tom a call. He came down, listened to the stuff, and started recording some things the next couple weeks. And
Some years later, I had an opportunity to play in another group, kind of a festival band, and we toured a little bit. And I took a break from that to spend time with my family, and some years later we got back together again on another project. And that's kind of what brought me into this group. Anthony Brown had a studio here in Warren, PA, and we were ready to record our first album with that group. And we did a good job, and so did Anthony, and we parted ways for one reason or another, and Anthony capitalized on that and gave me a call, and I just couldn't believe that I got the phone call from Anthony to play in this group, South 62. It was the biggest opportunity that I've had as a musician. And everyone in this group is just the highest caliber that I could ever ask for to play with as a group. Anthony I met like 2 years ago, I think it was. Darren Payne I actually met in the 90s. He was a drummer in a group called Brandy Lies. I owned a nightclub at that time, and I hired his band. They played there a couple times a month. They were pretty good. And Jeff Lewis, I didn't know him until I got together with Anthony and the group. Rich Alcorn, I didn't meet him until I started with a group, but it turns out we lived about 2 miles from each other, and we'd never met.
I had been working with producing another band, and I met a guy named Tom Hodges, and he was a dobro mandolin player for this band, and I said this guy would be a great fit, you know, with us, and so we asked him to kind of get in the project.
The album has been a bunch of fun for me. It's a great learning opportunity for me as a dobro player. It's kind of new music for me. I've been playing bluegrass for a long time, and this is the country vein of that, and I'm not used to it. So it's been a great learning tool for me to focus on this music. It prompted me to take up the steel guitar. That's been a lot of fun too. Still have a lot of learning to do on that instrument. The mandolin fits in pretty good in this group, I think. So I get to do a lot of different things in this group, kind of a utility guy, and I feel good about that.
I just remember sitting in here thinking, wow, that's what we needed. We needed that. I mean, he was like the secret ingredient to take these songs from good to awesome. I mean, it was just that thing that we needed. And not only did he play the mandolin in the dobro, and then he started picking up the steel, lap steel, pedal steel. And he's just been a major ingredient in the sound, and it's been fantastic.
Back to the learning part of it, at first, you know, I heard a couple songs, say, yeah, this is pretty good stuff. These guys, you know, what do they need me for? They sound great already. You know, they already have a couple of songs developed. And then I start to do some work, and I can't tear myself away. I'm in my room, in my little practice space at home with headphones on. I'm supposed to be making dinner for my wife, but I'm just so engaged in the music, I just can't stop. I'll play it 100 times in a row, just trying to perfect that spot in the song that I'm never happy with. But I just dove into it. I couldn't stop. Yeah, you hear it once and it sounds great, especially the way that it's been mixed, and we're finally done with the recording and it sounds awesome. But even the raw tracks that I listened to months and months ago, just the skill level of all the other musicians in this group, you know, I just want to be a part of that. And I couldn't stop listening to it. I've heard those songs, probably not as many times as Anthony because he does the mixing, but a lot. I've listened to them a lot of times. And everybody that I've turned them on to, the guy that I bought the steel guitar from, well, it used to belong to his dad. He passed a few months back, and you know, I sent him a couple of tracks with a steel guitar on there, and he was just blown away. A lot of my friends, they just can't believe that I'm blessed with this group and this music, and I feel the same way. I feel blessed.
So now we have a drummer, we have a guitar player, we have the singer, we have a keyboard player, and our sound technician and engineer in the studio. We're needing a bass player. So we looked and put ads on and tried to find somebody, and we couldn't find anybody out there. And then one day Anthony had oh yeah, I know a guy.
I started playing bass probably when I was about, I think about 11 years old. And the thing that inspired me to play bass, I don't know why, but for some reason I loved funk music. You know, I loved the Brothers Johnson back when I was a kid. There was a song called Stomp. And it had a killer bass line. And I thought, what was that? What is that? You know, and so I discovered what it was, and it was the bass. And so I wanted to learn how to play like that slap funky thing going on, you know. And so as the years went by, you know, I was introduced to Rush probably a couple years later. We're talking about, 77, 78. I used to go to the YMCA, and they used to play Rush on these loudspeakers down there, which I couldn't believe. I mean, to me, it was like satanic music or something, you know. I mean, I didn't know, but it sounded great, and I loved it. And so I realized I was really attracted to the bass guitar. My dad took me uptown, and I bought this cheap Sakova or something like that bass guitar. It probably cost about $100 at that time, and it was really chintzy. It had flat wounds on it, and I started to play that. Started to learn some boogies, took lessons for about a year, and that was it in terms of my bass lessons. I mean, 1 year of bass, and everything since then has been by ear. And I just kind of learned how to play and listen to music and play it by ear, I guess. But anyway, that's kind of how I started, and I really do. I love funk music, and I love jazz and all different kinds of music. I mean, I just got done playing a bluegrass festival here 3 or 4 weeks ago, and that's not what I normally play, but it was fun to play. I got into dental school, and while I was in dental school, I met a couple other guys who, one played guitar, one sang. And we decided, we played music on the weekends and everything, but we also, after we would see patients during the day, we would go home, go back to my house, and write some music and play some music. And so we started recording as a 3-man band. And we had a studio drummer who came in and filled in and did a great job with the drums. And we made our first album, and it was called Lingual Groove. And lingual groove is actually a groove on the inside of a molar. It's a groove on the inside of your, lower first molars there, just so you all know that. So that was the name of it. And the name of that CD, that was our band name, Lingual Groove, and the name of that CD was Open Wide. And we had a great time recording that. And that was my first experience with recording ever. And it was in the basement of some guy's house. And it very, archaic kind of, and nothing like what we're doing now. But it was a lot of fun. We had a blast doing it.
So kind of through the whole album, Rich was playing bass in the whole recording and doing a great job for a guitarist, to be honest. And so we were thinking more on the live side of things, and Jeff was really looking for a solid, really solid groove and bass player. And a guy came to mind that I tracked years ago, and that was Brad Kenzer. We got a hold of, and he loved it. He loved every song we were doing, and got him in at the end.
So then I ended up getting out of dental school, went on to orthodontic school, became an orthodontist, moved to Franklin, Pennsylvania, and met Craig Kerwin. Actually, I knew Craig Kerwin when we were kids, but met him again I guess, and he wanted to start a band, and so we started a band called the Craig Kerwin Band. And Craig said, you know, he wrote all this music, and we started playing it in his garage and everything. And finally, figured we could maybe record this stuff, and so he talked about this guy named Anthony Brown. Anthony Brown, he's so great, you know, we're gonna go up there and record on him. He really knows how to do this stuff. And okay, fine, let's go, you know. So we came up to Warren, Pennsylvania, and recorded my first CD with this band, the Craig Kerwin Band. And Anthony was incredible. He actually made us sound good, which was, it was hard to do. I mean, you had to be a magician to make that work out. And so he made it sound fantastic. And so that's how I met Anthony, and that was probably, oh gosh, was that 15 years? It was probably 15 years ago at least.
We've also had a few other musicians come in and do some parts, and then we ended up finding Brad to play bass, who we'd known for a little while, and always knew he was a great bass player, and he came up and listened to it, and he liked it, so now he was in, and so we pretty much have a really good solid core of a band together.
Anthony calls me and he says, hey, Brad, I need to talk to you about something, you know, and I'm thinking, oh geez, what could that possibly be? I mean, what, you know, why would he have to talk to me about something? And so he said, would you be interested in playing in a band? It's, you know, it's a different kind of music, you know, than you're used to playing, because I was used to playing kind of funk music and jazz and rock. You know, I love Rush and Chili Peppers and all that stuff. And he said, it's different, you know, it's a country vibe, you know. And I thought, country, I don't know. I don't know if I can, I don't know. It just kind of sounds boring to me, I don't know. And so he sent me the tracks, some of the songs, and I listened to them and was absolutely, completely blown away. Because I'm not a country fan, but I can tell you that I am now a country fan, if this is country.
Brad come up, same deal, listens to the stuff, he's like, yeah, cool. He goes in and lays down his tracks. Amazing, phenomenal. You know, God's hands on the deal. He's helping us get this album set and ready to roll.
The talent of the guys in this band is amazing, and how could I possibly say no to a band that can play like this? And I just figured if I could be a part of that, how lucky I was, you know. And so I of course said yes, because I couldn't turn it down.
So Brad says he knows this banjo player who's also named Brad, and he said he'd probably be willing to come in and lay down some banjo tracks to help out and finish the album off. You know, and we're talking, we're 3 days from completing the album, and all of a sudden we're adding a banjo player to come in and track stuff down. It was crazy. So this gentleman walks in, and we find out he's a doctor. And he pulls his banjo out, which was beautiful, absolutely beautiful instrument. And then he started to play, and he blew us away. So, you know, we're honored that Brad Fell came in. He sat in and put in some phenomenal banjo parts.
So we were trying to figure out what we were going to call this whole project, and so we had come up with a name based on the road that connects us all. And we came up with South 62 because that's the road Jeff and actually Tom and, well, Darren, whatever, he used to come down that road. They come to our rehearsal space, or where we were recording, and that was the road that connected us all. And so it was kind of that whole, yeah, coming down South 62 to, you know, to jam and record and have fun, and so I had the idea, you know, for the one song on the album called South 62, and it was, you know, that love and drive of, you know, coming down to play music and record and just have a good time with your brothers, you know, playing music. And so we definitely liked the name, and we figured it was. I figured it was deserving of a song too, because that just had a great feel for it. So, you know, that's how we got our name, and we dig it.
a friend of mine calls me up and he says, hey, Montel Williams is coming into town to do the Extreme Home, the Veteran Home Makeover. And they're looking for somebody to maybe play. I was like, well, you know, if they're looking and interested, you know, play them our song. If they want us to come and play the song, we'll play the song. Sure enough, we're part of the show, the date night. We learned a lot about reality TV that night. It's not so reality. It's a lot of made up stuff. So we got to play at a local place, Southern Tier Brewery, and you know, we played 4 or 5 songs that took 5 or 6 hours because nothing's one take on reality TV. And you know, that was amazing night for us too. It just keeps, you know, we're like a ball in the slot machine getting kicked around.
I'm happy with how it's turned out. Anthony and I wrote some music together on this one. We got some older stuff, some newer stuff on here, as far as, you know, older for me that I've been playing for a while, but it'll be new to everyone else outside our immediate area.
So I have to be honest, I really wasn't a country guy at all. I never listened to any country. Actually, you know, Rich kind of roped me into the whole thing, to be honest. I was more of a progressive rock guy, and I kind of drew him more into that side of things. So we were like both kind of, you know, gelling on, you know, opposite spectrums, I'll say. So when it came time for the songwriting, any of the writing we were doing together it was different. It was kind of a hybrid style writing.
People say it's different. It's hard for me to see that just because I've been around it for too long. I guess they've been a part of my life for so long. I don't hear them other than the way I just hear them. I don't see them being as different, or I don't see them as being. It's just country music to me. But I can understand that when they say it sounds different because of all the different influences I've had musically and the different influences Anthony's had, and the culmination of all those together.
And everything just turned out really nice. You know, I definitely have learned to, you know, smooth it up a little in the writing side of things and the production side of things. But honestly, being outside of country, I think, gives us a unique feel to the songs that is different from your everyday country listening. And a lot of people these days are they're used to the different genres they hear all day. It's not like the old days where you only had a few genres. Now there's, I don't even know how many. It's ridiculous.
But here we are, however many years later, and these songs are finally have come to fruition, and we've all kind of put our little signature on them, and you know, I think that's kind of how all this came about.
So it is different. It will surprise some people. And the guys we've brought in, Tom and Brad, they've made it even more different. I mean, it just has a lot of different textures to it. It's just a culmination of tons of different influences put into one thing, and I just think it's great.
It's a different production side of things. It's not your typical, I'll say, you know, country sound, and that's kind of what we were after. We needed to be a little different. Now, we didn't force it, it just came natural, I'll say, because I don't even know if I've ever listened to a country song. Maybe, I don't know, The Dance from Garth Brooks. There's a couple out there, but, you know, I wanted to keep it that way so I wouldn't be, you know, formed by any of that.
It's been a year process, on and off, in between families and life and work and vacations, and nobody here has the coronavirus. just all those different things. And piece by piece, I kind of feel like as this has happened and as my music career has gone on, God has just given me another piece of the puzzle as He saw fit, as it goes. And the new group that I'm playing with is phenomenal now.
Here we are. Hopefully I can hold up my end of the band by playing bass well enough to get through this whole thing, you know. I'm just hanging on, man, just hanging on. And so these guys are rocking it out and I'm just hanging on, so.
I love it. This is kind of like my dream band I've been waiting for my whole life, and I just hope everybody likes it as much as I do.
And now the album's, you know, done, out there, ripping, and none of this could have happened at all if it wasn't for the grace of God, our loving wives, and our families who put up with us in and out. I mean, we're all working full-time jobs, and then we're coming into the studio at nights, you know, working till 10:30, 11, 12 o'clock at night, 2 in the morning if it needs be, to get all this done. And we just, you know, I want to say special thanks to all my band members' families for their understanding, and my own family for that. It means a lot.